Welcome to I Have Something to Say, where unfiltered opinions meet raw authenticity. If you're tired of the same old canned answers and crave genuine conversations about real issues, then you've landed in the right spot. So buckle up for a roller coaster of diverse perspectives. Yours truly, Samí Haiman-Marrero, and my co-host, Chris Majocha, will dive headfirst into topics that impact our daily lives. From the boardrooms to the streets, get ready to hear real people cut through the BS and deliver the discussions you've been waiting for. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of I Have Something to Say. And we're very excited to have as our guest today, Miss Candice Simmons. I just want to give a little bit of background. I met Candice many years ago, just advocating for under-resourced communities. And I won't get into the details because that's a whole other podcast, but she stepped right in and we were working lock and step to really mitigate disparities in terms of access to resources, and that's how I fell in love with her. That's the short of it, right? But today, thank you for joining us, Candice. You know, you're such a leader here in the Central Florida community and beyond, really, because you really are able to connect people to the resources that you need. You step in to unabashedly advocate for underestimated and forgotten communities. And you're also very much the speaker, right? Like the way you really engage people and make them listen and really listen, to make sure that everyone gets seen is so powerful. And I just experienced that, right? It's one of the first big events that I went to after the pandemic, and which was the inaugural event for the Black Empowerment Community Council in Osceola County, that was founded by our dear friend Tiffany Jeffers. And you were the keynote speaker, and I'm like, okay, yeah, time to have Candice on our podcast, and I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was so good to see a dear friend like you in the crowd that day. It made it easy. Definitely made it easy.
So tell us quickly, like, how and why, right, have you stepped into this role, really? Because it's not how do you say, it's not just a fad, or no, like you live and breathe and act upon, right, these principles of advocacy and equity and inclusion, right, every day. Like there's not a moment that I haven't heard from you or seen you that you're not in that mode, right? So how did you land here?
Man, that's such a big question because I don't think I stepped into it. I think I tripped over into this role. I really do think that's what getting in alignment feels like. Um,
Mm,
it's like a knee jerk. It's like getting popped into place almost. I've been in the financial industry for 25 years. I've worked for banks ever since I can always remember. But when the opportunity came to work on the philanthropic side of the banking institution, believe it or not, Sammy, I almost didn't take the chance
mm,
because nothing on my resume said I could do this type of work. And I had such a tunnel vision of what I thought my career should be. And I listened to everything that everybody else said I should be doing. And so I look back almost 8 years ago and I almost didn't bet on myself. And in the very ninth hour, like the last minute, I'm so thankful for having amazing mentors and counsel. Joyce O'Dong, you may know her, but in the ninth hour, Joyce said to me, she goes, Why are you counting yourself out? Like, you're saying no before there's anything to say no to. Just give yourself a shot at it. Um, and so I did. I said, okay, I'll give it a whirl. And that's really where I found my voice. I found the sweet spot at not only being really, really good at something, but being wholeheartedly passionate about it, because I found my purpose. I found really myself. I mean, the communities that I show up for every day were communities I grew up in. Like, these were my grandmothers and my mothers and my aunts and my uncles and my brothers and my cousins. Like, I don't have to study this stuff. I don't have to go to a conference to understand it. I lived it. I was blessed to be given the opportunity to have this amazing career. Had it not been for a praying grandmother, I could have been the statistic, right? And so um, I found really the place that God just created me to be. And so I didn't step into it, I fell into it. And I think I thrive in it because I'm just in line with God purpose in my life. So I give the glory to him. This is just how he built me, and now I'm just walking in what he destined me to do. So I get no glory in this.
That's amazing, Candice. And this is my first time meeting you along with our audience here, but I just think that's a very powerful thing that you, uh, when you say you found your purpose, a lot of people think like you're supposed to already know what that is, but it was something that you were already, counting yourself out on, or saying like this isn't me, or this isn't for me. But by taking that chance and that leap of faith, that's when you realize that it was who you needed to be, and you kind of found yourself through that. So that's just a really powerful thing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. And even in this work, Chris, I still ask myself, and I still pray, like, hey, how do you want to use me? Like, still show me how to do this work in a meaningful way, because to do this work, it still cannot be about Candace. Like, I don't show up every day and fight these battles for Candace. I cannot commit to this for myself. It is still your will, your way, your purpose, your people, wholeheartedly.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
then leads to the topic at hand, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
during this inaugural event, you were asked to speak, and I'm sure you get a chance to speak or invited to speak many times. This was very powerful though, because it was establishing an organization that is so needed in Osceola County, in a county that's really so far behind in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That too is a whole other podcast.
Right.
But I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to really have you come and speak to us, so we could record it, what you spoke about, which was then to, once you find your purpose, committing to purpose. And then I got to tell
Right.
you that throughout your whole speech, my hairs, I was just like, my hairs were standing. I'm like, oh my goodness, it was so powerful. We were at the Solid Rock Church in Kissimmee, and the environment
Mm-hmm.
just lent itself right to this message. That just tell me, just share with us like the highlights and what propelled you to talk about committing to purpose.
Yeah, I think it was so important when you think about the charge of Tiffany Jeffers and the Black Empowerment Council out there in Osceola. Um, they have the commitment to do this work, right? They have the heart and the courage and the desire and the willingness to make that first step. And from one Black woman to the next, I think it was so important that I just poured into her what's needed to do it, what to expect around the corner in doing this work, and what it's going to take to sustain this work wholeheartedly. And I wanted her to understand that why we say yes is important, how we do this work matters, and what we do is so important, not only to the now, but the generations to come after us. And so that day, I talked about number one, why we say yes matters. It's not about us. Like you can't do this work for pat on the backs and for thank yous and for accolades and for awards and for red carpets. Like if that's why you're doing it, then you're starting off for the wrong reasons, right? You're starting off the gate totally wrong. And when we think about our ancestors, Dr. King didn't start it for an award. Rosa Parks didn't start it for a thank you. Like we have to make sure that our why, the reason we initiated, is for the right reasons and it's not grounded in us, that we have taken us out of the equation. How we do it matters, that the communities that we represent matters. Are we grounding them in the work? Are we making sure that we tell their stories the correct way? Are we centering the voices at the center of what we do? Or are we just doing it to them, right? We got all the answers and the solutions, so just follow us. Or are we truly walking alongside the communities? Are we triaging the problems? Like so often, we're just triaging the issues and we're not going after the systemic barriers and challenges that exist. And it's so critical that as organizations serving the communities that we are committed to despairing and tackling the barriers, because if not, in 10 years, we're trying to solve the same problems. We've got to move beyond the same problems. I'm not saying that there are always going to be problems, but in 10 years, we should be trying to solve new problems because we should move beyond what we're doing in 2024, right? In 2043, I hope my children are solving something new. They've gone beyond what mom was working beyond. But then as leaders doing this work, the reality is it does get exhausting. And so it was important for me that I spoke to her and that counsel and encouraged them to stop and pour into themselves. How do they make sure that they rest? How do they make sure that they pause? And how do they make sure that their cup is full? Because if their vessel is empty, they can't give to someone what they don't have. And so that prioritizing themselves does not become a thing of selfishness. It really becomes a thing of necessity. And so what does that look like as a leader who this work can become exhausting? And so they really do have to have a moment to stop and re-pour into them. As they take part on this journey with the BECC. And so it was just important for me that day to just remind them of the necessary steps that it was going to take on this journey, and to be reminded of what's important and to not get distracted with the things that don't matter, and to realize that the seeds that they plant today will harvest for generations to come, and they may not see um, all that they leave behind. We have to be so mindful of, the things that our ancestors fought for. They had no idea what they marched and battled for, what they would see. Right? They had no idea that there would be, the first Black president of the United States of America. That was not even on the agenda at the time. And so we may not see the byproduct of our harvest, but it's important that we start to plant and sow those seeds and be very mindful of it as leaders and stewards of it today.
Yeah, go ahead,
Oh,
Chris.
sorry. No, I was just going to say, and Samí, both of us have worked a lot within diverse communities and just with community organizations in general. And I think, from my work when I was living in Central Florida, it's a breath of fresh air for me to hear somebody talking about, building a community initiative from the community up. So many times organizations try to, build it from the top down. And if you're not there walking side by side, if you're not in the know of the issues, if you're not experiencing these things firsthand, then you really are more often than not out of touch with the solutions that need to happen. So they become tertiary, or like you said, like triaging or putting a band-aid on the issue, but the thing that's creating the wound is still there. So I just think it's really
Right.
important. And it sounds like you are, certainly committed to your passion in this way. But I just want to commend you for that, because there are so many leaders out there who, again, are just thinking from the top down on the strategy. But the fact that you are utilizing the resources, utilizing the connections and the people in the community to make this change, that is, I think, what's going to bode well for your success with this initiative.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
I think there's history, there's a blueprint for that, right? Like when
Right.
you think about from the bottom up, when you think about, the Montgomery boycott,
Mm-hmm.
that was the bottom up. I mean, that started with women
Mm-hmm.
who said, we're not going to sit on the back of the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just boycott the bus, right? And it shook up the economic system of public transportation because maids, the bottom of the barrel of the economic system, women who cleaned homes said, we're not going to ride the bus. Shook up the transportation system that got everybody at the top saying, okay, we're listening. We're listening. What are they saying? What do they want? We're gonna listen, right? The blueprint is in American history.
Mm-hmm.
Before there was LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook groups and text messages, we had living rooms and the church, the churches is where we met to figure out how do we work together as a community. And so, and that didn't matter the color of your skin. It was about right or wrong, right? It was about equality at
Mm-hmm.
that point. And so I think there is beauty in community saying, okay, right or wrong, equality, let's just pull up and let's talk about what do we need to make sure that folks can live a beautiful life together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and let's pull up a seat. And I shared in that room, we got to be willing to be in it for the long haul, right? Like when all the press conferences are over and you're done holding the big pretty checks and there's no more LinkedIn posts to tag your names and there's nothing else to share and you got no more likes, when all of that is over, are you in it for the long haul? When nobody else is saying you're doing this work, will you still be doing this work?
Yeah.
It's so important that you're going to pull up this seat at this table and stay at this table, even though nobody even knows you're at the table, are the type of folks we need in this room.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Critical.
And part of it is what you mentioned before. It's also talking about and not warning, but just giving a heads up, right, to leaders of what's around the corner. You mentioned that before,
Right.
right? Because that too is not new.
Hmm.
And so what is
Right.
that? What is that, Candice? Tell us, right? What should you expect when you do this kind of work when no one's looking, and when you're advancing un poquito, right? A little bit, and and things are going in favor of the community. So what are these things that you need to be aware of, right? That you're going to, that will present themselves inevitably.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to come across is the criticism, right? It's the why is she doing this? Right? Who told her to be the messenger? It's the what about us? It's I think the criticism and the feeling left out um is the hardest thing that you have to be prepared for. It's also the days of just doing it alone, right? When now there is no party to attend, the only thing left is the work, right? All the fun stuff is over. It's just the work, and nobody wants to do the work. They just want to
Right.
come for the fun stuff, right? So you're like, I ain't got a party, but I got tons of work if you want some work to do. And then that starts to feel really alone.
Mhm.
Um, it's after all of the no's and the door closes, and you start to feel like you didn't get as far as you thought you should be.
Mhm.
And some of the work I've done in the community, I think about some of the community initiatives I personally have worked on. This work, Sammy, I've been working on for 4 years.
Mhm.
Would I personally love to be further along and have millions of dollars linked to it? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But I don't get to just throw my hands up and be like, this is hard. I'm over it, whatever,
Yeah.
right? And be done with it. Um, and so it's when the days just seem longer than everyone else's days that you have to be prepared for. In those times, that's when I give myself and others grace,
Yeah.
right? That's when you have to lead in love, um, and realize, everyone is on a different page in their journey, the same way you're on a different page in your personal journey, right? And so it's being willing to, communicate through the differences, have an open door when they're ready to join you, right? Um, and be patient and be patient through the process. But you definitely do have to be prepared for the lonely days, the criticism, um, along the way. Yeah.
Candice, you just obviously talked about the inevitable challenges that you'll face doing this work. Um,
Mhm.
can you point to or share with us the other side of that, the benefit of something beautiful that has come out of doing this work?
Oh man. The small wins, right? The small wins when someone uh believes in you or sees the vision or makes that investment, even if you don't get the investment, but all of a sudden somebody goes, oh, that's going to be that when we get that, that's going to be incredible. Um, and and when you start to find your village, like
Mhm.
everyone can't go with you on the journey, right? But the further you get along, you start to attract the folks that will be a part. And so as your village starts to grow, I think that's just beautiful. Um, I've met so many incredible folks that have become lifelong friends. like a Sammy that pours into me. When I meet her, she gives me just as much energy as I give her. That when I'm done talking with Sammy, I'm like, okay, let me go get some done on my to-do list. Let me go tackle something today because Sammy told me I can, therefore I can. So I think it's just the experience with other folks that's in this fight that is beautiful, that it reminds you that it is worth not laying down and taking injustice as that this is just how it is. Right?
Mhm.
Like, no, it is the experience of the friends that we have um that makes it incredible, Chris. And then
Yeah.
all the small victories, all the small victories and all the small building blocks that puts us one step closer, right, to the goal.
And can I tell you that is so true because when we met Candice, it was about, I want to say about 8 7 8 years ago. It was right
Yeah.
before Hurricane Maria
Mhm.
was so detrimental to Puerto Rico, and we experienced right before we experienced that influx, right, of people coming
Right,
from
it
Puerto
was.
Rico. But when I met with you, it was really seeking support to get some kind of funding to help a community in Central Florida that 59% of the working families there live under the poverty level. And
Mhm.
I started working in a collaboration with a local church. And I approached you and I say, hey, we have this idea to really start helping mitigate because the problem is so big, right? But at least
Mhm.
something so people know that that's the hub, that and it's in Azalea Park, right? And so then we designed
Yep.
the Azalea project with the idea of bringing in partners and support the food pantry that's at the church, but then also do what is it, professional development training for career
Yep.
advancement in bilingual format, English and Spanish. I don't know if you remember that.
I
But
remember. I
but
do. Yeah.
I was like, bam, 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 all of this stuff, and you're like listening, and it was great because you're always expecting a no or a maybe, and after my spiel, right, of 10 minutes, just like, we've got this idea, and I know it's never been
Chris,
done.
she was laying it on, Chris. She
Well,
was
I'm
I
laying
sure.
it on.
laid out shit, and I was like, and when she said yes, let's do it, it was so, for me, overwhelming and cathartic almost, right? And I'm like, really? you know and it was
Uh-huh.
fantastic because it was just what we needed, right, to start
Mhm.
something that then how do you say, promoted collaboration within the community, and then other organizations came by. Then Maria happened, everyone.
Yeah.
But through that church, we did also the first vaccinations, because that
Right.
community was a hot spot. So not even what,
Mhm.
8 months after you and I met, and we got that initial, seed money through your ability, right, to find, the resources,
Yeah.
we were able to prepare the community to do a drive-through vaccination with the what was it, the guard, what is it, the National Guard. They came for
Mhm.
500 seniors. Could you imagine? I mean,
That's
some of
awesome.
Mhm.
the first
Wow.
shots, right, were done there, and it was like 8 to 10 organizations that were in that parking lot, everyone with their masks, doing everything. And since then, just so many people have been impacted through that church, and they've gone to do
Wow.
different things in that community. And all we needed was that initial, like,
At
push,
one. Mhm. Mhm.
right? To
Yeah.
attract other people. And I know that the university, a university down in South Florida, came and did a study, right? And all of that, and just all of
Mhm.
these things compounded, right, on top of that initial, how do you say, that
Mhm.
initial interest, really, and compassion, and just
Mhm.
understanding understanding, but
Mhm.
it's because you are from the community. You got it, right? And you also understood that it wasn't going to be like in 6 months, I want a report, which a lot of RFPs
Right.
expect that, right? You're like, dude, I can't move a
When
mountain, right?
I
Yeah, in six
when I
months,
work with when
Yeah.
I work with funders, I talk about the power of truly being a catalytic investor
Yeah.
and what that looks like. But I also understand my unique position. My lived experience, right? I come in, you know, being a Black girl born in the South, it's there's a lot of lived experience, Sammy, that allows nonprofits to like skip past go collect 200. You could just, right? You don't have to. And then what you didn't know, Sammy, I mean, you did a wonderful spiel, but what you didn't know when I relocated, so I moved to Orlando. I grew up in Pensacola, and so I mean, I grew up in for Florida, as closest to the hotbed of that like South you can get is Pensacola. We're 30
Yep.
minutes from Alabama. And so
Right.
when you think about like the South and the history of like Florida, Pensacola in Florida is as close as you're going to get to, some of that history. But when I moved to Orlando, in a U-Haul with my husband and two kids in one car and didn't know a soul, had no family, no friends. I did not have the career I had now, right? Right? So we needed all of our paychecks in our household to pay every bit of our bills. I was coming here on a wing and a prayer and trusting God and, just wanted to create this beautiful life for our little ones. Um, Azalea Park was the community and the neighborhood that welcomed me and my husband and my kids.
Mhm.
And Forsyth Woods Elementary, the Title I 99% Hispanic, was the elementary school that welcomed my beautiful little kids. And I was the PTA president at that school where every parent spoke Spanish and I couldn't speak to any parent. And so I watch hands down the teachers of that school try to work with those working parents. And so although I don't know the full experience of I lived it. I lived in that neighborhood. So when you came to me, I got it. I was like, Sammy, you can skip past go. I live in it. I live in that neighborhood. These families feed me all of their amazing food and their drinks. Girl, I got it. And so there's power when funders can just sit and like, if you don't live it and you don't understand it and try to learn and listen. And so that's why the yes was so easy because I was living in it and I get it and I knew it. And so that's the power of community, my
Yeah.
friend. And so it was truly an honor for me to be um, a catalytic investor and build something that it's now 2024
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
still there
Yeah.
beyond a Candice and a Sammy, right? That's what a catalytic investor will do.
Right.
You will invest in something in a community that will be there beyond a you. And that's what a commitment to a purpose will do. You will invest in something. That church and what that community has no idea that a Candace and a Sammy had a conversation 8 years ago
Yeah.
but guess what? A Candace and a Sammy does not need to go in that room and tell them what we did and get an award
Right.
to say we did it with our name on. We didn't do it for that 8 years ago. We did
Mm-mm.
it so that community would be okay without us.
Yes, and they are, right? So now they're
And they
thriving.
are.
They have better resources, and we've moved on. I'm like working on so many other projects as you are too,
Right.
right? Yeah.
We're
And so
done.
that like
Right.
my work is done here. Ciao. You guys are good.
Right.
Everybody's right. Okay, good. Because now they need me over there, right? So then, yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really great.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say I think it it speaks to something again, just going back to like the building from the community from the ground level up. Candice, you were saying before there was LinkedIn, it was community, and what does your community need? Even if it goes so much further than the racial makeup of a community or the political divides of the community. It's what does the people, my neighbor, the people down the street, what do I need for us all to thrive and to raise our boat and and the tides and stuff. And I think that's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people just put so much emphasis on the divisive things or the labels when I think the real impactful work that both of you have been able to impart on Azalea Park and all the work that you do comes from those lived experiences of just being able to be there to break bread with somebody, to have the conversations, even if you don't necessarily speak the same language, to still find ways to connect. And that's just the shared human experience. And when we
Mm-hmm.
reach out to that neighbor to help them out when they're in need, in hopes that they'll do the same for you. I mean, that's just where that's basic human interaction. But when you emphasize and, like you said, put that the investment, the catalytic investment into it, you really can move mountains. Maybe not in that report in 6 months, but where it has Azalea Park has come to now is incredible. And this is kind of my first time hearing the story of that origin. Even though as Samí, I've worked with you a lot on the Azalea Park coverage stuff, but this is
Yeah.
that's where it starts. It started with just that human interaction, breaking bread, and now look what you've been able to accomplish for that community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I found myself of recent, Chris, becoming a huge proponent of strengthening ecosystems.
Mhm.
Um, I hated science when I was in school, right? Hated it. But when you think about the ecosystem and how they function in science, right?
Yep.
Like the rain or the grass put out the oxygen fed the tree. Like the whole essence of an ecosystem was that it took care of itself,
Wow.
right? And so if you think about an ecosystem, it should take care of itself.
Mhm.
If you are focused on entrepreneurship, then an entrepreneur ecosystem, everything interacting with it should be self-contained, taking care of itself. And anything that enters into it would just be multiplying,
Mhm.
but it would not be dependent on anything else. And I think, to your point, we have functioned so much siloed and divisiveness that we don't have these healthy ecosystems of our communities and our businesses and our families and our kids and our communities have struggled because of it. And so when I think about the role of businesses and funders and community leaders like ourselves, we have got to take ourselves out of the equation. We cannot enter these spaces with egos and pride and self in the equation. We have got to enter these rooms in a way that we are leaving them where they are okay when we exit left.
Yeah. I
And
love.
so I am always mindful of that as a leader in this space. I don't want any community, any organization, any nonprofit, any space I enter to be dependent on me to be able to maintain or sustain. They need to be able to thrive on their own. That's an ecosystem. When it has everything it needs to do what it was designed to do by itself.
This is so amazing. You're so right, right? If it were that easy, right? In the sense of, but it's that, right? It's that human, greed, personal interest, agendas, whatever you want to call it, right? And so then,
Yeah.
but I'm hopeful that these conversations, right,
Yeah.
help people see a different way, because I don't know, I feel good when I see everybody else around me feeling good too, right? And I think
Yeah.
that part of it is also redefining what success looks like, and what,
Mhm.
living with what you need and even what you want. You can want things too, right? But not at the expense
Right.
of, another human being lacking, right? And so I don't know, just
Right.
I feel like we can, talk with you for hours, but what would you like to say, from the lens of committing to purpose? What would you be your call to action for all the leaders, right? Because a lot of people feel, oh, I'm not a leader, but I feel, and I know you feel this too, and Chris too, right?
Oh,
That everybody, all of us can lead, right? So what would you say is the call to action for people out there that want to affect change, in terms of committing to purpose, right? What would those next steps be?
oh, we're all leaders, number one, right? Everyone um, was born with an authority to impact change. I think the first would be to identify your why. Know your why, your WHY first, would be the call to action, because that will be your North Star in defining what you do and how you do it. It's knowing your why.
That's
That's what I
fantastic.
leave with.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Candice, for joining
Thank
us
you, Sammy.
today.
Thank you, Chris. This was
Oh, our
amazing.
pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. Thank you for tuning in, and tell your friends to find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to show up and speak up.